Good day. My name is David Gamble, and I am here to present a lecture on The Winter's Tale, which I like to prepare for my friends and fellow condo residents before they go to see the play at Stratford, Ontario in the Shakespearean Festival. So I'm offering this today to the general public, and I hope it serves perhaps students or new teachers or the general theater goer. So today, The Winter's Tale is the subject. It's a bit long. It's a very complex play, very unusual. It is a play that was written in 1610, 1611. And towards the end of his career, Shakespeare became a little more daring, which I think you can see with Cymbeline and the use of the gods and the you should say extreme behavior. And in this, there's an extremity at the end of the play, which I will mention later, which really brings this to an almost mythic level. The play perhaps has been called a problem play because of that. It doesn't really fit other plays. It has its own individual idiosyncrasies and attributes. So it's essentially a play that contrasts, and he does this in other plays, and this is rather signature of Shakespeare, where you get two worlds. You get two worlds, one which is the civil order, the court order, the mortal order of law and nationality, if you like, law and statehood. And the other world is a natural world whereby you have a liminal space. Anything can happen. It's a transition world where the old rules don't apply. And you see that in As You Like It, for example. You have the court world, and then you have the Forest of Arden and what can happen. Midsummer Night's Dream is a perfect example of that, where magic and fairies and all kinds of things happen. Actually, the mortal world gets sorted out when the rules are taken away and people go back to the happy resolution. And in this, we get also two worlds, one of which is the kingdom of Sicily, and the other is the kingdom of Bohemia. And Sicilia is that order, the king dominates, his rule is law, etc. And when we go to Bohemia, as the contrast, it is a natural world where the old hierarchy is disguised. The old hierarchy doesn't control. Things change. It is a world, it's a liminal world of transition, and that is Bohemia. Also, we have to remember in the Shakespearean plays, we're set against the medieval background of the metaphysical order, which I would call the chain of being. So at the top, you have God and the orders of angels, and it's a caste system. Fewer of the highest, more of the lower, and then down to the human, same caste system, all strengthened by the divine right of kings. Furthermore, you get in the animal, plant, and mineral world another order of that which is nearest to God being higher in order of perfection. And therefore, that medieval structure with the divine right topping it all is fixed. And it comes up in this play in an unusual way. More on that later. You also get in this play the journey of the soul. Starting in innocence with childhood, and that is very much a theme in Act 1, Scene 2, you'll see it. The innocence of childhood, then sin, all the temptation of Eve, and this is very dominant in the play, and then you have sin, epiphany, realization of one's old condition of one's soul, repentance, penance, absolution, and resolution, and redemption, and maybe even resurrection. But again, more on that later. This play is in the period coming out of the medieval background is also loaded with classical references being part of the Renaissance. It must have been quite a time of life where the Renaissance was taking over, reshaping the medieval structures, which were quite simplistic and church driven, and by going back to history, to the classics, to bring forth the humanism of the classics and changing the rules, if you will. But of course, you don't get up one morning, oh, this is a new period of human existence. There's always the blending, the melding, the transitional period, and here you have that with Winter's Tale and other of his plays. But in the Renaissance tradition too, as humanism, excuse me, has taken over, you get a more in-depth view into humanity so that you get a psychological depth that the medievals didn't present. It was developing, but it did not present. And here you get that deep psychological inspection by the author in his invention of the human. Further to that, I would say we have a touch of the modern, and you get what you get in Macbeth, and you get in this play, and that is the introduction of nihilism. How modern, right? The existential nihilism. That's there, and it is mentioned by the hero by the repetition of the word nothing, nothing, nothing. Wait and see. So, also in this play, very, very important, is the role of the woman. Shakespeare is a supporter. The women he presents, I'll say Isabella, Measure for Measure. Portia, Merchant of Venice. You have Rosalind, As You Like It. You have Desdemona challenging her patriarchal, almost backward father. And in this play, you have Paulina, who is an exemplary woman, a strong woman, a courageous woman, justice and mercy, and high heels, depending how you present it. So Shakespeare, now Taming the Shrew, of course, is the opposite. It's just a different view of the patriarchy winning. That happened, of course. He's reflecting the world of the time. So to start the play, Shakespeare often does this, starts with minor characters or secondary characters. He does it in Macbeth with the witches. In this play, he starts with Camillo of Sicilia and Archidamus of Bohemia, and they talk, and they tell you what we're supposed to know. And everybody's supposed to know. They know it. They're courtiers. This is the general knowledge, and they talk. They are, in a sense, the groundwork which you will understand, and they talk about the relationship between the two kings. The two kings, Leontes, and we'll try to remember this, I'll mention it again and give the references. Leontes of Sicilia and Polixenes of Bohemia have been best BFF, right, since youth, and even suggesting that in youth, when they were children together, there was an Edenic quality. And this Edenic quality was so pure that nothing could damage it. Aha, nothing's that good. So, and this also, they took pride in this Edenic quality of their relationship. And pride and Eden go together when Eden falls. Don't you know? So the bard sets the characters up in this way, so the surfaces are pure and innocent, but in that vanity over their purity, how contradictory, something's got to give. So the second scene then is the inciting force. Things move; they can't stay the same. So with the inciting force, you see the kings together, and they have preserved this innocence and this friendship, as said, even when they went back to their respective kingdoms, and they passed letters back and forth, almost love letters, but letters of commitment to the friendship, as they said, gifts, letters, loving embassies, such that they were never affectionately separated. It is so strong that there is, and I'm quoting, there is not in the world either malice or matter to alter it. This is Act 1, Scene 1, line 32. Nothing could change this. Yeah, right. Such a bright statement should cast a shadow, for nothing can that perfect. So what are we being set up for? Nothing can be that perfect. So the foreshadowing, another oft-used trick, whereby we are given a hint of the future events or settings which are thematic. Comparing the two kingdoms, the gentleman of Bohemia says that in return hospitality upon Cecilia's reciprocal visit to Bohemia, the guests would be given sleepy drinks that your senses unintelligent of our insufficience. In other words, when you go to Bohemia, it's much toned down. It's not the order of the court. It doesn't have that acuteness or precision, and you'll be given sleepy drinks. Bohemia is a very dressed down state, and you'll see that. And you see that again when various characters go out into the wilderness or the forest or whatever. It's a very languid sort of atmosphere, and we'll get those here. So watch for that. So in Act 1, Scene 1, we get the testament to those undying loves. No sexual attraction, no original sin. However, if something affects, and this is true in the whole metaphysics of the order, as I said, the chain of being, that if something affects the king, it's all trickle down. As in Hamlet, Rosencrantz says, "Never did the king sigh, but with a general groan." Down it goes from the king. So there is a problem for Leontes, the king of Sicilia. His best friend is leaving after a 9-month visit. He left his kingdom for 9 months. For a 9-month visit, he has to go home and, yes, I suspect, look after some matters of business, and so he should. So Leontes, the king of Sicilia, doesn't want Polixenes, the king of Bohemia, and I'll keep reminding you, to leave. So he says to his very pure, chaste, wonderful, blessed wife, Hermione, "Hermione, you go tell him to stay. Maybe you can get him to stay longer. I want my friend to stay longer. Please do what you can." As a matter of fact, his nudging is almost abrupt, but he is the king speaking to his wife, gender difference, right? And he says, "Why haven't you done this? Tongue-tied our queen, speak you." So his abruptness, this is Act 1, Scene 2, line 27, quite abrupt, pushing her. Of course, there's going to be a bit of an irony that he pushed her into a situation that he can't handle. However, Polixenes resists the host's insistence and agrees to stay one more week. Thank you, Hermione. The shadow begins to come over, to swallow their paradise. Nostalgically, Polixenes of Bohemia states to Hermione, Cecilia's wife, the two boys played, and I think this is very interesting, played in an eternal time, out of time, unspoiled by thoughts of mortality, as Dylan Thomas would have had it, ran their heedless ways and sang in their chains like the sea. So Polixenes states, "We were, fair queen, two lads that thought there was no more behind, but such a day tomorrow as today, and to be boy eternal." They lived in an eternal moment. It was perfect, which he implies it was a time of Eden. He even uses the symbol of the lamb. How innocent, such a Christian symbol. "We were as twin lambs that did frisk in the sun, and bleat the other, one at the other. What we changed was innocence for innocence." Both were innocent. "We knew not the doctrine of ill doing," that's the original sin, "nor dreamed that any did. It didn't exist for us. Had we pursued that life, and our weak spirits ne'er been higher reared with stronger blood, we should have answered heaven," this is under death when they're older, "gone to heaven, boldly, not guilty, the imposition cleared, hereditary ours." The hereditary, that's original sin, would not have been theirs. Wow, pretty strong stuff. If you remember your catechism classes or your church classes from years ago, the very Christian symbol of the lamb hints at the Immaculate Conception, born in innocence, the two of them, right? But lambs are sacrificed, remember, for these two. So the original sin didn't apply to them. There's a vanity there, and we know vanity leads to downfall. However, the presumption of Eden by the two men is nothing short of vanity, a sin of pride, which is, of course, original sin. So, Polixenes' answer, right? "O most sacred lady, what brought Adam down? Yeah, he says this. O most sacred lady, temptations have since been born to us, for in those unfledged days was my wife a girl. He hadn't met a woman. The innocence was still there. Now, this story of Eden does bear that, doesn't it? It's Eve. She's the problem. We're going to do the same thing. So this is very liturgical, if you will. Your precious self had then not crossed the eyes of my young playfellow, and he was innocent. You had met him. They were not tempted by the fires of concupiscence. What eradicated Eden? So this is really scriptural. What eradicated Eden? In this patriarchy, the woman is the agent of the fall from Eden. It is this that brings us to the inciting force. Leontes recalls that Hermione, a woman of grace, and the word grace is used with her often, was virtuous in their courting with Leontes, this is Cecilia, with Hermione, right? Who they marry, a beautiful relationship, and he was absolutely mad for her. He says he dated her for 3 horribly intense months. He couldn't solidify it. 3 crabbed months had soured themselves to death, ere I could make thee open thy white hand and clap thyself my love. Then didst thou utter, I am yours forever. For 3 months he died. Right? The innocence with Polixenes is over. The woman takes him away. He falls in love madly on all levels. Won't go into it. That's Act 1, Scene 2, line 102. He was fraught with the fires of concupiscence when that hand was given in love, and which now, it's the same hand symbolically, which is suspect, because she now actually has touched Polixenes' hand, and Leontes sees it with that hand. Tragically, the chaste hand given to Leontes in their youth now cracks this Eden by extending that same hand to Polixenes. In dutiful friendship, she was told to do it, to encourage him to stay. The myth of innocence is broken. In Leontes' suspicions, that hand is now sullied and duplicitous. With growing twisted imaginings, and you got to watch his mind go through the play. Once that seed of dirt gets in there, that sin, that shadow, that thorn gets in there, the irritation grows and grows. And Shakespeare is capturing the human, right? Leontes envisions and he sees that I guess he has taken her hand, whatever, Polixenes and Hermione. Oh my God, that hand is in somebody else's. And that's all, by the way, that happened. I want you to be sure. Leontes envisions paddling palms and pinching fingers, making practice smiles, as his rising temper fantasizes adultery, despite the fact that he encouraged the two. You remember, speak you woman? He encouraged it, but he can't stand the idea of that hand touching, and the hand is very symbolic. So, and he even chastises his wife for being tongue-tied. You got what you asked for, and you can't handle it because mentally you were not equipped. You did not trust. This is the moment of the fracture when he says that. For that one witness gesture is structurally the specific, precise, inciting force. From that moment, it's like a butterfly wing, you know the story. That butterfly wing creates tempests. One hand given in honest friendship under orders from the man who condemns it. The inner twistings will grow. And he says, too hot, Act 1, Scene 2. He thought it was a matter of heat. It was not. It was a kind, calm, cool gesture. The fall from Eden is a crashing of trust, then jealousy and rage based on a naive and obedient action of the faithful Hermione. While the digression from the biblical story is apparent, we are reminded that Eden cannot be ours. So, he even takes it, he has a young son. Hermione has born a child, a son, an heir, Mamilius, young, I'm going to say 7, 8 maybe, years old, a beautiful child, and he looks at the son, and he comments, oh, now that the adulterer has gotten into his head, He's thinking, my son, do I wonder about that? So he says, well, he comments on the similarity. Well, he has my nose. It must be. Similarity nose, thereby affirming Hermione's faithfulness, but switches abruptly, observing that, but he's got really different hair. These people had no idea of genetics, of course. Really different hair, differs from that of the boy, showing his rising torments, but then reverses. So you get him in the early changes doing a backing and forthing thing between suspicion and, oh, okay, I'll relax. Oh, wait a minute, there's that one. So, yet they say we are almost like as eggs. Women say so. They will say anything. There's an element of misogyny Shakespeare observes in men. Invention of the human. So he blames all women for dissembling. Paranoia, pairing paranoia and narcissism, the next descent is to misogyny as he generalizes from suspicion of Hermione to all women. Imagining the cuckold in this specific case, he thinks in his pride he has become the general rule. It happened to me. Well, I'm like everybody. I am everybody. We've got the pride going here. His case is the absolute. The world, it's all about me. You didn't know that. It's all about me. So he says, the cuckold, is another speech, is like 1C2, 192. The cuckold holds his wife, somebody else's wife, perhaps Hermione, that little thinks she has been sluiced in absence. He doesn't know that his wife has been sluiced. I won't go into that. That speaks for itself. And his pond has been fished by the next neighbor, the next door neighbor, by Sir Smile, his neighbor. It's that bad. You get that. So now his mind has moved that far, and this is in Act 1C2. It's all in the same act. Shakespeare doesn't waste words. To him, now adultery is commonplace, as is such demeaning vulgarity. The sluiced is totally vulgar. Even his quality has dropped. The world is infected by it. Such projections come from the diseased mind of Leontes, as his world, in total, is sullied with a morbid combination of jealousy and nihilism. His whole world will mean nothing but this, and it is based on nothing. Nothing has created nothing. It's all ex nihilo, and he sees that nothing is the only thing that is. And he has a long speech to that effect, which I will read to you, as he says. So it is very, very modern. So it infects everything. Whew. He realizes nothing with this illusory sin, which becomes his world. Now, here's where he says it out loud. And all eyes, blind with the pin and web but theirs only, that would unseen be wicked. Is this nothing? Why then the world and all that in't is nothing. The covering sky is nothing. Bohemia, nothing. My wife is nothing. Nor nothing have these nothings, if this be nothing. Nihilism. His raison d'etre now is based on a falsehood, which is an illusion. He's sunk far and quickly. Shakespeare is very efficient. Such is the foreshadowing of his future, which will empty all joy to nothingness. So, Shakespeare has passed an existential sentence on the tyrant's increasingly morbid imagination. However, in the court, as he expresses himself about his wife, etc., he has a trusted courtier by the name of Camillo. Camillo, the trusted peacemaker, is caught. Camillo has a conscience, and he has a duty, and it's an interesting contest there. It's like Pisanio in Cymbeline. Do I follow orders and condemn my soul to death? This is Nuremberg. Following orders, is that the excuse that's valid? But I followed order when I did all those terrible things. Nuremberg said, no, that's not good enough. So we have that crisis here. Shakespeare is really, it's the human condition. Camillo, the trusted peacemaker, is caught. He recognizes what he calls is a diseased opinion. True. in his master. That's at 1 scene 295. However, as the infection takes hold, Camillo is ordered to murder Polixenes. Will you take this guy out and kill him, please, Camillo, and let me know how it goes? The fall from innocence, so measured in the script, tumbles stage by now it's affecting his courtier, his court, and he's going to kill his friend that he lived in innocence with. This is the insidiousness of distrust, fear, anger, paranoia, how it grows out of something that should have been perfect, but the perfection was delusion. What's the lesson? You better recognize that there is evil accompanying, or doubts, or that which would destroy you that accompany you, and whatever illusions you have, you better recognize them. The poetry filled with the infection disease imagery is once arresting and chilling. So Polixenes summarizes, and he says to Camillo, as Camillo goes and tells Polixenes, this is what I got to do to you. Sorry, old guy, but I got to do this to you, he says. And Polixenes, the intended victim, does understand, and it's interesting in his speech. He says, this jealousy is for a precious creature. Well, Hermione is that good. Of course, if there's jealousy, it's going to be extreme. As she's rare, must it be great? And as his person's mighty, as he's so powerful, he's it, right? Divine Right of Kings, must be violent. And as he does conceive he is dishonored by a man which ever professed to him, why his revenges must in that be made more bitter, especially come a friend sluicing his wife. Fear o'ershaves me. So this has grown to proportions, proportionate to Leontes and Polixenes' positions as the higher and most powerful. Hermione's virtue makes it worse. Leontes' greatness makes him more violent. Betrayal by a trusted friend must bring even more bitter revenges. Fear, cruelty, and mad jealousy will overcome Leontes and all of Sicilia. Remember, never did the king groan, but with a general sigh. No, sorry, other way around. Never did the king sigh, but with a general groan. It travels down and gets larger towards the bottom. However, there remains a shred of grace. For Camillo, the faithful servant, in a classic conundrum that he shares with Pisanio of Cymbeline I mentioned, but I have to follow the orders. Do I follow the orders to my king, or do I follow the orders of God? Thou shalt not kill. What he does then, he will take Polixenes, tell him, protect him, order the ship, he has authority, get the guards out of the way, and sail to Bohemia with him and save him. He is a good man and sacrifices his whole position. He's, in a sense, a refugee and goes to live in a neighboring country. Well taken care of by Polixenes, you can be sure. But he leaves everything he knows. He leaves all, whatever relationship he had there. He's not married, and I'll tell you more about that later. That does come into it. So in Act 2, Scene 1, the plot deepens with Leontes' paranoid jealousy turning to cruelty as Polixenes has predicted. The alleged traitor Camillo has escaped with Polixenes, with whom he was apparently in league. So Polixenes, if they were going to kill me, and it goes crazy. And he's gone, and he's betrayed me, and he's a bad man, and all that stuff that you know isn't true. Hermione now, oh, by the way, Hermione now is pregnant. That's going to work on him. Is accused of bearing Polixenes' child to further bludgeon the aggrieved queen. Mamillius, the sparkling wit, the boy, 7? Of course, Shakespeare's children always seemed a little bit too mature, if you read the scripts. Mamillius, the sparkling wit, having introduced the phrase "a winter's," he uses the term "a winter's tale." This is a dark tale. This is the dead of winter, right? The climate is really, really not very bright. Thematic is removed from his mother, so you better get the boy away from his mother. She's bad. I don't want the influence. Following, Hermione, despite protest, is jailed despite the courtiers challenging Leontes. Some of his courtiers say, oh, you can't do this is too much, but they all back down. They all back down. So Leontes, wondering what to do, says, okay, now remember, there's the mortal world, and this is a world, a mythic world, and it is Renaissance England. You, of course, you believe there was a higher order. There's no question. You don't come out and say, well, I'm an atheist, so careful. You might say, well, I'm a Puritan, or I am a dissenter, or an Anglican, and not Catholic. And these days, by the way, Shakespeare is considered, his family is considered to be a little bit quiet about their preference for Catholicism, which is another story. Read Stephen Greenblatt's story of Shakespeare's time. Um, is um, is jailed. Hermione then is jailed. Uh, so Leontes goes to the Oracle of Delphi, bringing in the classical, right? The Renaissance went back to get to the further into the future. Um, so he says, I'll take the word of the oracle, and it shall stop or spur me. We'll see what happens with the response from the oracle. Thus, the play, as initiated by allusions to Eden, leads to a mythic portrayal. For Shakespeare sets up the divine as the final arbiter. It doesn't come from human courts. So he appeals to the gods. He uses classical deities. Same thing happens in Cymbeline, which I won't go into, but the gods are used again to elevate. Only the gods can elevate your caste, get you out of your caste, can give the real final arbitration of any doubt. So Act 2 moves quickly. Leontes' wrath has not been assuaged by his noblemen, who make honorable attempts to reason with him. Well, Antigonus, very important character. He is married to Paulina. You'll meet her. Paulina's husband defends Hermione initially. Oh, you can't do this, and etc. I'm not, and so he says, Leontes says, well, these women, they can be seduced by their nature, etc. And Antigonus will protest, but he caves in. He tells Antigonus, I want you to take that baby, right, and immolate the baby, immolate the baby. They burned so-called witches, but the heretics are more evil than the witches, of course. They weren't witches. The malleable Antigonus is serviceable, implicating that even his daughters are failures of women. So he sort of assuages his role with Leontes. At the same time, he seems to protest. What's he going to do? So we'll do a comparison of, there's a spectrum of good people and not so good people in the play, where you have Camillo and Paulina, Antigonus, and then another you have met him yet, Autolycus, and a kind of a moral spread, ethical spread in the play. It's a very interesting one. So the plot darkens. Hermione, now pregnant, is accused of infidelity with the Polixenes, the coming bastard being the proof. Mamilius, we're hinted that Mamilius health, with all this horror going on, his mother's in jail, his constitution weakens, and he's very sick and actually does die. Soon Leontes learns that Camillo has protected Polixenes and has left Bohemia. Of course, that just furthers his paranoia. And he says, Camillo was his help in this, his pander. There is a plot against my life, my crown. All's true that is mistrusted. All my doubts are the truth. Wow. In his mental state, suspicion trumps everything. Thus, human feeling, paranoia, is never wrong. It can't be reasoned with. Hermione's main support is her, what do you call it? Lady in waiting, her senior lady in waiting, Paulina, wife to Antigonus. That's an interesting contrast in that family. Throughout this impending catastrophe, she is the strong one. So Hermione's in jail. She's going to have the baby in jail, and she goes to see Hermione, and of course you get male guards saying no, but she gets in. So the long and the short of it, again, she's acting like Portia and Imogen and Cymbeline and Isabella, and she in Measure for Measure. She is the strong woman, mercy and justice. So she plans, her little plan is to take the baby from Hermione and take the baby to Leontes, and Leontes, of course, will melt in the sight of innocence. Not true. So She doesn't blame the guards for acting the way they do. Of course, he's a very powerful man. Fear you his tyrannous passion more, alas, than the queen's life? A gracious, innocent soul, more free than he is jealous. She throws the moral question up to them. That she's good at that. But Leontes rejects everything and calls her, because you're going against me, you must be a witch. Which, by the way, James the First, who's the king at the time, when this is written, had written a book called Demonology. And it was used as a reference. I mean, this stuff was taken as true. It's only 80 years later, you have Salem, Massachusetts, right? They're all British subjects. So that witchcraft thing was around a lot. Edward IV's wife, Elizabeth Woodville, was accused of witchcraft. So you don't like somebody, you accuse of witch. And now I guess I could accuse somebody of, well, you make it up. There are these slogans you can use for people you don't like. They change with the times, but they brand. So she's a witch, a mankind witch. She's not even true to her gender. She's a mankind witch. In a debate that elevates her to the active moral conscience of the conflict, Antigonus observes, yet he does not stand for his wife. Ooh, Antigonus. I have a special relationship with Antigonus. The gutsy Paulina almost calls Leontes a tyrant, but just stays away from actually using the word. So he says, after he says, you're going to burn the baby. Horrible. She says, I care not. It is an heretic that makes the fire, not she which burns in it. The heretic to the Christian rule of love and justice and mercy. I'll not call you tyrant. I'll not call you tyrant. But this most cruel usage of your queen, not able to produce more accusation than their own weak hinged fancy, something savors of tyranny. Doesn't say tyranny, said something savors of tyranny, and will ignoble make you, yet scandalous to the world. Your historical record will be a disaster, and you'll deserve it. So she accuses him of cruelty based on delusion, and she threatens that his name in posterity will go down the tubes. It will be scandal. She is dominant. Even he backs off her. She is the strong woman. There's so many. Isabel in Measure is incredible. Leontes' defense is weak, for he skirts her power by accusing Antigonus. Can't you control your wife? If the wife is outspoken, the husband's at fault because he's weak in front of her. This gender thing. And then you get Macbeth, right? Lady Macbeth, who is a horror, defeminizing, and he acts emasculated, right? So he didn't stand up. He should, and he had the doubts, and he didn't stand up, and he really suffers for it. At the end, she gets thrown aside. She should have died hereafter, if you recall. So Antigonus is what Hannah Arendt might be called the rule of nobody. In reference to Adolf Eichmann, the man pretends to immorality. He has a little moral debate. Isn't that nice? I don't know what he's supposed to in court. So glad to save the baby from a fire. Well, he at least did that. And what he's going to do with this baby, who is going to be taken to the shores of Bohemia, across the water to Bohemia. We got to get Bohemia in there. And leave the baby on a beach. And we know they're wild animals, bears and foxes and tigers and God knows what all, right? And going to leave the baby to the fates. What a coward. Can't do the act, but he can't save the baby and do the right thing. So it's that middle morality that condemns us, because he, I believe, represents not the ruling elite, that's Leontes, divine right of kings, but the executive class. How the executive class, who follows the orders, implements policy, all of those things, how they behave in the face of power, can create the entire dimension that we must suffer or live in or enjoy, whichever way it goes. And that's what he is. Shakespeare will tell you, he had it. So he takes the baby to some remote and desert place, quite out of our dominions, and that there thou leave it, without more mercy, to its own protection and favor of the climate. That's Polixenes, the infant. Surely this is a death sentence. But Antigonus' limp moral stance follows orders. So this nobody is the proverbial empty suit and takes it. Okay, to go on. So the messenger coming back from the oracle of Delphi. Again, the myth supersedes. The combatants square off. Leontes makes his accusations. Hermione defends herself in an eloquent summary before the adjudication of the oracle. And we hear it. Finally, Hermione, the oracle has said, and they're reading from a script, Hermione is chaste. Polixenes, blameless. Camillo, a true subject. Leontes, a jealous tyrant, his innocent babe truly begotten, and the king shall live without an heir if that which is lost be not found. Now, that's a very important line. He will live, he will not have an heir, if that which is lost, think the baby, be not found, because the baby is going to be taken away. So, a little suspense for the future. So, in his overweening pride, at first, he dismisses it. There is no truth at all in the oracle. The session shall proceed. This is mere falsehood, he says. But, as if from the fates, the gods, what have you, Mamilius, who has been sickened unto death, dies. He takes this as a call from the gods to change 180 degrees, which he does. And then he says, it slaps him in his face, and he says, Apollo's angry, and the heavens themselves do strike at my injustice. This subtle reversion, not subtle at all, sudden reversion is his epiphany, a realization of truth, epiphany, his realization of his own sin. He has hit the Damascus road. It came from a bolt out of the blue. Such self-realization is so necessary for the process of repentance, penance, absolution, redemption, right? So this is the spiritual journey, very medieval. It's an everyman kind of thing, right? We still have that operating. The plot moves quickly following this climax. So Hermione faints, and off she goes. He hears later that she has died, even though he has turned 180 degrees and says, oh, do look after her and get her back to life or get her back to health. So he's a 180-degree flip, and it's fast with the death of his son and the oracle combined. It didn't come out of nothing. So the epiphany is instant. And so but you can't go back to an earlier state. Now he can't, well, okay, Hermione, let's go home together, etc., etc. Well, she's sick, and then you get a report that she's dead. You can't. The fates won't let you do that. So he moves on, deeply covered with remorse, sin, repentance, and all those things. And he admits that he too much believed his own suspicion in Act 3, Scene 2, when her death is reported, and he can't go back. So, then he remembers Camillo's piety. That too comes back, and he starts reconstructing the past and realizes how wrong he was. So Paulina, when she sees Leontes being so aggrieved, ripping himself apart, says, she's not only is she justice, but she's mercy. She actually feels for him. She is the good woman, and says he is touched to the noble heart. What's gone and what's past help should be past grief. You can't change the past. Now come away from it. Start again. And so there's mercy in her as well, which is important at the end. She blends mercy with justice. She must now, in that she declares herself a foolish woman. A woman can't know too much. It's that gender thing of the times, but things move on. Act 3, Scene 2. The drama has passed its halfway point. And what we see in Act 3 then is the next stage where Antigonus is now taking the baby to Bohemia to leave the Bohemia with the wild animals on the beach. But he says, ominously, there's a lot of pathetic fallacy here, where the skies look grimly. Oh, the gods aren't happy, and threaten present blusters in my conscience. And the heavens, with that we have in hand, are angry and frown upon us. The audience may expect punishment, for the land is dangerous, famous for the creatures of prey that keep upon it. All perpetrators will die. And what happens, I'm going to summarize this. He has a dream of Hermione, right, where the accusation is. Hermione visits him in his imagination and names the baby Perdita. Now, if you know any Latin or French, Perle, she is the one who's lost, Perdita, and underscores Antigonus' intractability. And she recognizes that he still thinks Polixenes was betrayed. Anyway, what happens? The baby's on the beach. A bear comes along, eats Antigonus. He's dead, and the ship goes down. The whole ship that delivered the baby is punished. They're wiped out completely. It's kind of Deus Ex Machina, of course, but they're gone. So, what do you have with the baby? Along come two peasants, shepherd and called clown in the text, his son, and they discover the baby. And with the baby, there is a pile of gold and a lot of letters, a lot of identifying features, which will come in later, of course. So they find the body. Now, there you get the words in this section: help, mercy, good deeds. You get a lot of that language with the shepherds. Now, here we are in Bohemia, which is that liminal space of nature where that hierarchy is really suspended. And these shepherds come on as the good ones, and they take control out of natural piety. It's lovely. So the virtuous language that we first hear in Bohemia sets the tone of Bohemia. Very different. So Act 4. We find in Act 4, time actually becomes an allegorized character. And we find that we're going to move ahead 16 years. So Perdita will be 16 years old, a young lady. She's now a young woman whom we are told now grown in grace equal with wondering, while living as a shepherd's daughter. They've adopted her, and she is a marvelous young woman, beautiful, kind, eloquent, intelligent, etc. Of course, she's come from good stock, and they did that, but that's another story. That apparently your social background, if you were of the good blood, you had the good blood, and you demonstrated it. Genetics wasn't their top subject. So, Leontes Leontes is profoundly suspicious of his son's attachment. Now, I said Leontes, and it's not Leontes, it's Polixenes. There is a festival. Let me start again. Polixenes, there is a festival. It's a sheep shearing festival, and Perdita, the shepherd's daughter, she's playing the role of Flora, which means flower, sort of the goddess Persephone-like of the spring, coming into a new season of the spring. And there's very much the story of love in this. And who comes into the picture is Polixenes has a son, all grown up. His name is Florizel. And everybody in this sheep shearing festival disguises she's Flora, and Florizel disguise themselves as Doukelos and Doricles. And so everybody's in disguise. And then Polixenes comes in, and he's in disguise as a commoner. So this caste thing seems to be gone. This is that liminal space. And where you have love, very intense, very pure, wonderful, between Florizel and Perdita, that is, Doricles and Flora, and they're playing that role. But Perdita is quite concerned. She knows who he is, and how can you come and give me love poetry and all this fine affection, and it's wonderful, but your father, remember, she thinks she is born a commoner, but bred otherwise. So, yeah, her breeding was different, but she doesn't know that. So that she responds, but we can't do this. Your father's anger would be too much. But Florizel, and he really is in love with her, and it's chaste. They've never messed around. So he says, no, he says, my love is so strong, that's more important to me. Well, Polixenes comes along in disguise and watches this. And there's a very interesting debate, which I will summarize very quickly. She is sort of the god or the spirit of growth and harvest and spring blooms and all that sort of thing. And she says nature produces her own and must be preserved as nature. So if you make a hybrid of two plants that don't meet, but you do it, that's offense to nature. So she says, Place should be kept as place. Remember, she's lower caste. She wouldn't dare go up. Polixenes says the opposite when she's arguing with him. Oh, no, no, no. If you take two things of nature and make something else, it's more beautiful, but it's all nature. Now, he's arguing for mixing of caste, if you will, ironically. However, when the whole thing comes open, and he takes off his disguise, and he tells Florizel, you hang around, he calls her a knack. It used to be a word for an old beaten up horse. You, this knack, you lose your rights. I'll disown you. No succession. And shepherd and little girl, I'm going to tell you, you muck around with him anymore, and I will impose a death sentence. Well, we have the same kind of crisis that we had in Sicilia, right? Threat of death. Um, so what you see here is Bohemia, the parallel universe outside the courtly urban world, and the law and order is getting confused. Florizel with Perdita. However, she's a little nervous. So, in order to solve this out, of course, and this happens in Midsummer Night's Dream as well, in all the plays, you have to, after the mix-up, after you stirred the pot, they have to go back to the mortal world where it becomes permanent. You can't just live in the liminal world for the rest of eternity. You have to go back and make it official, which of course they do. So the second plot begins then with Perdita and Florizel, the son of Polixenes, who now is under threat of banishment, and Perdita under threat for her life. Now remember, it comes in later, that the shepherd and his son have found Perdita, the baby, go back 16 years, have found her with gold. They would never have seen that much gold. And also documents and scarves that could be from the royal palace. And they've kept that. That will come in later. But in the background there, of course, you have what's growing is Florizel's real love and it's real, for Perdita. I know we're going on. So Perdita says to Polixenes, to me the difference is dread in our status. Your greatness hath not been used to fear. Even now I tremble to think your father, she says to Florizel, by some accident should pass this way as you did. What by accident he finds out, which he does much later, he finds out, oh, the fates. What fate are they going to play? A trick are they going to play on me? And later, Polixenes does threaten. If I may ever know thou dost but sigh, and that thou no more shall see this knack, as never I mean thou shalt, we'll bar thee from succession, not hold thee of our blood, no, not of our kin. So he threatens them. They have to leave. Where do they go? You know where they go. They go back to Sicilia. Of course, then Leontes will have to recognize his daughter, and all will be well. So, you don't need that. Oh, by the way, had Perdita actually been the daughter of Polixenes, this written play wouldn't have been written, because she isn't born with the right blood. So it's the disguise that covers everything and makes the confusion and makes you ask the question, but it would not have happened. And this happens in other plays as well. In the Camillo, Paulina, Antigonus foursome, you've got Paulina the Good, Camillo the Good, right? And they join forces later. Actually, they get married at the end. So you have male-female goodness melding into one. The goddess of mercy in Chinese, by the way, is hermaphroditic. So you have that union of the good woman, the good man. With Antigonus, you have that it's the liberal coward, perhaps the most dangerous. And then he brings in this character, Autolycus. And I won't go into a long thing on Autolycus, it's too complex. But Autolycus is the amoral. He only has himself. And he's the comic relief. He's very funny. And I'll leave you to read it or enjoy it in the theater. But he, in being true to himself, is asked to do something. And he can't do it because it's a good thing. I'll do something else. So his knavery, as he calls it, doesn't let him do the thing that he's told to do, which is supposed to be the good thing in moral terms, but I will do something else because it's more me to be naughty. And so he does, but as it turns out, it is the very good thing. It's better, but he doesn't know it. And so that irony suggests to me, and perhaps this is just me, that there is something at the core. If you're true to yourself, if Camillo, who is true to himself, if Antigonus had been true to himself, that is the beginning of empathy, compassion, mercy, and justice. Being true to that inner thing in your soul. And he is. And he says, sure, the gods do this year connive at us, and we may do anything extempore. The prince himself is about a piece of iniquity. He's naughty, the prince, Florizel, stealing away from his father with his clog, that's Perdita, at his heels. If I thought it were a piece of honesty to acquaint the king withal, I would not do it. I hold it more knavery to conceal it. I can't do the honest thing, because I'm the bad guy. And therein I am constant to my profession, so he doesn't tell him. He does the right thing out of the depth of what he thinks is his being. Interesting. So his role is comic, but there seems to be a higher morality in being true to oneself, as he, by default, does the good thing, which he ironically calls knavery. He's the epitome of Polonius, Maxim, and Hamlet. To thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day. Thou canst not be false to any man. Oh, that Shakespeare guy. Antigonus' self-deception is the real sin in this play. He does it. The liberal obedient. So, the resolution must take place in the orbital sphere, so we all go back. We're getting to the end. Yeah, well, another 5 minutes. Act 5 is pressing for resolution. 16 years have passed. There's a problem then back in Sicilia. Leontes, 16 years later, is getting on in life. There's no heir. They don't know about Perdita. They don't know that she's, going to perhaps marry Florizel. There'll be lots of, the Kingdom United. Oh, happy, happy, happy. But nobody knows that. So they're looking at Leontes and saying, you better get married and make a baby. Because that rightful succession is the stability of their world. What happens when there's no throne to be occupied by the obvious one to take over, primogeniture? Instability, and they're afraid of it. What dangers by his highness fail of issue may drop upon this kingdom and devour uncertain lookers on. We're nervous. So but the Paulina says, no, you must not remarry. What does she know? And the ending is in question, and this, I think, makes it more interesting. So there is none worthy respecting her that's gone. You're not going to get a Hermione. You had your chance. Besides, the gods will have fulfilled their secret purposes, and the gods have declared. For has not the divine Apollo said, is not about the child that was lost. He will have no heir till that which is lost be found. They've said, so knock it off, Leontes. You have to obey the oracle. Is not the tenor of his oracle that King Leontes shall not have an heir till his lost child be found? You better obey. So where is it? So Paulina says very cleverly, you can have a wife that I choose. And he agrees. Well, that's interesting. That she chooses? Oh. So, my lord. Yet if my lord will marry, she says, if you will, sir, no remedy but you will give me the office to choose you a queen. She shall not be so young as was your former, but she shall be such as walked your first queen's ghost, the same spirit as your first queen. It should take joy to see her in your arms. We will all love this. What does she mean? Where's Hermione? We thought she was dead. There's so much in that speech suggesting the new wife with the spirit of Hermione. The resolution of the young lovers, I'm going to abbreviate that. They go, we don't see it in the meeting with Leontes, and we don't see it with the grand revelation and the disguises come off and all of that because they go in disguise. We don't see it because you can't have two great climaxes at the end of the play that has one major thread and a secondary thread. So the secondary thread is done, if you will, off stage and reported. A good theater, that. So they present. Perdita comes. The shepherds do show up with present the bundle with the gold and all the identifying objects, saying, "Oh, this is who she is. Oh, happiness, happiness," and everybody is reunited. So the question now, and the story of Antigonus is told. The shepherds say, "Yeah, we buried the guy, so all is going well." But the nature of Hermione. So they go to Hermione's home or wherever Paulina is keeping her, and there is a statue of Hermione. And to make a long story short, Paulina holds them back, sort of in abeyance, if you will, and don't touch her, etc., etc. And as we learn, Paulina, for some reason, and this is reported, has gone to the place of where Hermione, or the body, or whatever, is 2 or 3 times a day. Was she dead? Was she in a catatonic extreme grief over what happened to her? That would be traumatic. Or was she not? Was she dead? So when they go in, there is a statue. Has she been resurrected? And so here you have a theme of resurrection. Almost. Not quite. But the suggestion is that things that have been dead are being reborn with love and mercy and justice. Oh, wouldn't you have it, right? Read the headlines. So Shakespeare enlivens the statue, and Hermione comes down and takes Leontes back from her statue-like condition. And then Paulina allows them to touch. The hand again. Wow. So, lines suggest a slow, dramatic coming to life when finally Hermione moves and joins Leontes, aged by 16 years, and the statue is aged. One must question this miracle and the intention of the author. What is he trying to get out of us? Is he inventing the human in us? In Shakespeare's time, there is no denial of the supernatural. Remember demonology. They believed it. Is this supernatural? Or is she simply being a wonderful nurse over 16 years? So there are critics who believe that Hermione was not dead, but kept rather surviving in some state of depersonalization and extreme grief by the good Paulina. Note her advice to Leontes, "She shall be such as walked your first queen's ghost." All planned. So, and which is rather nice too, at the very end, Camilla and Paulina marry the good, marries the good. The little metaphor in there, perhaps. So with either interpretation, was she dead? Was she resurrected? Was she not dead? Was she brought back with loving care? With either interpretation, we are left with the paradigm of a morality play, moving in stages from innocence with a vanity or pride despoiling it in sin, epiphany through divine oracle, remorse, repentance, and a long-term penance, redemption, and even a possibility of a resurrection, certainly spiritual. And of course, the Renaissance work must have more. Thus, as Harold Bloom wrote in his book's title, The Invention of the Human, the pre-modern play goes much further than a catechetical view of society. This isn't just a catechism lesson on repentance. It's a deeper psychological, the humanism is there, into the human condition. As demonstrated, life and death have no simple answers. And so we are left with a mystery, divine or not. We are engaged with the moral paradigm of the foursome Camilla, Paulina, Antigonus, and the amoral Autolycus. There's also much to be observed here. Perhaps it is not too much to suggest with the wedding of Camillo and Paulina that goodness is not gendered, but rather cleaves as one flesh. As a side note, the Chinese goddess of mercy is hermaphroditic. The Kuan-Yin, I believe it's called. My Chinese is really rusty. The good find joy. The self-deceiving hypocrite is punished. Integrity of self with amorality is presented as comic, much needed in this play. However, again, there's an education and even cautionary here in this invention of the human, the romantic morality play. And there you have it. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope if you see the play, this helps for you to plug in and just relish the invention of the human. Thank you very much for your attention.